The Galactic Council's mocking laughter filled the massive chamber as Captain Caleb Sullivan stood before them, until the faint roar of humanity's ancient warship engines silenced them in an instant. Sullivan smirked, knowing those same rusty, inferior ships would soon be all that stood between the galaxy and annihilation. "How come seeking our aid?" Councillor Keed clicked, towering over the human from his floating pod, compound eyes glinting in the holographic galaxy light. "After your own mighty fleets failed to retrieve this Nexus cipher." "Every species has its strengths," Sullivan said. He met the 7-foot alien's gaze without flinching. "Humanity's happens to be performing the impossible, and unless Zardoc is stopped, your shining cities and temples will be rubble soon." Keed's antennae twitched. The insectoid turned to his fellow council members, who buzzed and chirped amongst themselves. The stolen artifact could unlock weapons to shatter planets. The warlord would burn a path to the galactic core if not stopped. "What would you need for this mission?" Keed finally asked. "A small team, 6 of our best. Enough supplies to reach the outer reaches." Sullivan crossed his arms. "And your word that if we succeed, humanity will have an equal seat on this council." The alien's mandibles worked furiously. Elevating a backwater species to such a status would be unprecedented. An outrage. But what choice did they have? The council races were desperate. They needed the humans' unorthodox thinking, their tenacity and resourcefulness in the face of adversity. "Agreed," Keed ground out as if the word physically pained him. "But if you fail—" "We won't," Sullivan said firmly, turning on his heel. The doors to the chamber opened as he approached. "My team will find your rogue warlord and drag him before you in chains, right after we pry the Nexus cipher from his cold, dead claws, for the right price, of course." The human strode from the room, a grim smile on his face, as the council erupted into fresh argument behind him. Let them doubt. Let them scoff at humanity's ancient, inferior warships and weapons. Sullivan would show them what tenacity and unbreakable human spirit could really do. He had a warlord to catch, and a galaxy to save, whether it deserved it or not. Caleb strode onto the bridge of the UES Retribution, his boots clanking on the metal deck. He glanced around at the outdated consoles and flickering holodisplays. The ship was a relic, but it would have to do. He had a job to finish. The council had scoffed when he requested the retribution for the mission. Keed's antennae had twitched, with barely contained mirth. "You intend to hunt down Zardoc in that rusty bucket?" The insectoid had chuckled. "It won't last a minute against his Trill dreadnoughts." But Caleb had stood his ground. "The Retribution's got a few surprises left in her," he said, meeting Keed's compound gaze. "Zardoc won't know what hit him." In the end, they had relented. They were out of options, and Caleb had a reputation for getting results, even if his methods were unorthodox. He had assembled his team with care. Each member brought a critical skill to the table. Liam Hawkins, their pilot, could fly anything with an engine. Ethan Reeves was a weapons savant, capable of coaxing a lethal shot from the most stubborn plasma turret. Mason Stone, their engineer, had a knack for keeping ships running long past their expiration date, and Noah Cross could infiltrate any stronghold, no matter how secure. Together they would track down Zardoc and retrieve the Nexus cipher, or die trying. The Retribution was docked at a forgotten human outpost, little more than a tin can orbiting a distant gas giant. As the team powered up the ship's dusty systems, Mason called out from the engine room. "Captain, you need to see this." Caleb headed aft, ducking through the cramped passageways. He found Mason hunched over an open-access panel, his face bathed in an eerie blue glow. "The Prometheus drive," Mason said, awe in his voice. "I thought it was just a legend." Caleb peered into the compartment. A dark matter power core pulsed within, harnessing the very fabric of the universe. With this kind of energy output, the Retribution would be more than a match for Zardoc's fleet. "Let's bring her online," Caleb said. "We've got a warlord to catch." As the Prometheus drive hummed to life, the Retribution system surged with power. Shields shimmered into place, hull plating reinforced. Weapon turrets thrummed with barely restrained energy. In the cockpit, Liam grinned as the sublight engines roared to life. The Retribution blasted free of the station's docking clamps in a blaze of fusion fire. Caleb watched from the forward viewport as the stars stretched into glowing lines. "Plot a course for the outer reaches," he ordered. "We'll pick up Zardok's trail there." Liam's fingers danced over the helm controls, guiding the Retribution through the treacherous asteroid fields and swirling nebulae that marked the fringes of known space. The ship's advanced sensors probed the darkness, searching for any sign of the rogue Trill warlord. They would find him, and when they did, the galaxy would learn just what humanity was capable of. The Retribution hurtled onward, a 150-year-old instrument of war given new purpose. Caleb settled into the captain's chair, his eyes fixed on the starscape beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, Zardok was waiting. And Caleb would be the one to bring him to justice. The Retribution's proximity alarms blared. Liam yanked the ship into a stomach-churning dive just as a trio of Trill fighters screamed past, disruptor cannons blazing. "Ethan, light 'em up," Caleb barked. The weapons expert grinned, hands flying over the newly upgraded firing controls. The Retribution's turrets swiveled, locking onto the Trill ships with inhuman precision. Lances of searing plasma sliced through the void, spearing two of the fighters. They exploded in silent fireballs. The third fighter jinked hard, trying to evade. Liam matched it move for move, fingers dancing across the helm. With a deft twist of the controls, he sent the Retribution spinning. The Trill ship, caught off guard, ploughed straight into a tumbling asteroid. "Nice flying," Caleb said, clapping Liam on the shoulder. They hauled the surviving Trill pilot aboard, the alien's grey-green scales glistening with sweat. Under Caleb's icy glare, he spilled everything. Zardok was headed for Zelos Prime, to a hidden research station called the Crucible, the same place the Nexus cipher had been found. "He thinks there's something there," the pilot hissed. "Something to unlock the cipher's true power." Caleb's jaw tightened. They had to stop Zardok before he cracked that code. Zelos Prime loomed ahead, a mottled brown sphere shrouded in wispy clouds. As they approached, a cluster of ships became visible in orbit, Zardok's fleet. "He's already here," Noah said grimly. Scans showed Zardok's forces had stormed the Crucible, overwhelming the Trill guards. Time was running out. "New plan," Caleb said, mind racing. "Noah and I will take the shuttle, slip past and infiltrate the facility. The rest of you, keep the Retribution here and keep Zardok's goons busy. Don't let any reinforcements through." Liam flashed a cocky grin. "We'll give 'em a good show." Caleb clasped arms with each of his crew, holding their gazes. No words were needed. They knew what was at stake. Then he and Noah were in the shuttle, rocketing toward the planet's surface. The craft shuddered as it knifed through the atmosphere, hull glowing cherry red. Noah guided them in, hugging the craggy terrain. They set down behind a towering ridge, the Crucible a distant gleam on the horizon. The two men moved out, weapons in hand, picking their way through the jagged rocks. As they neared the facility, a shimmering energy barrier came into view, surrounding the complex. Caleb pulled a disc from his belt and tossed it. The device stuck to the barrier, flashed once, and the shielding flickered out. They were in. Alarms wailed as they sprinted across the open ground. Shapes emerged from the buildings ahead. Zardok's elite guard, insectoid faces twisted with rage. Disruptor blasts filled the air, sizzling past Caleb's head. He and Noah dove for cover, returning fire. The battle was brutal and close. Zardok's troops were good, but Caleb's team was better. Slowly they advanced, leaving a trail of twitching, bullet-riddled bodies in their wake. Above them, in the skies of Zelos Prime, the Retribution danced and soared, a silver dagger amongst the stars. Liam wrenched the ship through a dizzying series of rolls and loops, evading the worst of the incoming fire. Ethan's hands flew over the weapons console, sending searing bursts of plasma into the enemy ranks. Trill ships bloomed into miniature suns as the human ship carved a path of destruction through their formation. In the Crucible's echoing halls, Caleb and Noah pressed on, senses straining for any sign of Zadok or the Nexus cipher. They had to find them, had to stop this, before the warlord's mad visions became reality. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, but as Caleb exchanged a determined nod with Noah, he knew one thing for certain. If humanity was going down, they'd go down fighting, to their last breath. The Crucible's halls echoed with the screech of disruptor fire and the snarl of Trill warriors as Caleb and Noah fought their way deeper into the facility. The air stank of ozone and charred flesh. Security turrets tracked their movement, peppering the walls with deadly energy blasts. Noah slapped a breaching charge on a sealed blast door. The explosive detonated with a concussive thump, shredding the reinforced metal. As the smoke cleared, a nightmarish scene was revealed. Towering containment cells lined the chamber, their force fields flickering. Within each was a horror from the darkest corners of the galaxy. Tentacled monstrosities thrashed against their bonds, insectoid abominations chittered and clacked, and in the center, a behemoth stirred, its massive bulk straining against the weakening barriers. "Zadok's been playing God," Caleb spat. The Trill warlord had turned the Crucible into his own twisted menagerie, and now he had set his pets loose. A pack of vaguely canine beasts, all tooth and claw, charged from the shadows. Caleb and Noah opened fire, dropping the creatures with tight bursts of plasma. But more came, a relentless tide of fangs and fury. They fell back, sealing bulkheads as they went, trying to funnel the beasts into kill zones. But the creatures adapted, finding new paths, hunting with eerie intelligence. And through it all, the behemoth bellowed, its containment field straining as it sensed the carnage beyond. Caleb and Noah battled on, past writhing serpents and chitinous horrors, leaving a trail of twitching abominations in their wake. The Crucible shook with the fury of their onslaught, the creatures of Zadok's twisted collection howling in answer. At last they reached the heart of the facility. Zadok stood before a pulsing console, his clawed hands dancing over the controls. Above him, suspended in a web of crackling energy, was the Nexus cipher, and interfaced with it, ancient and terrible, was the conduit. "You're too late, human," Zadok hissed, not turning. "The power of the singularity is mine. With this I will unmake the galaxy and reshape it in the image of the Trill." Caleb raised his disruptor, finger tightening on the trigger, but before he could fire, a massive impact rocked the chamber. The behemoth had broken free. Tentacles each as thick as a man's torso lashed out, shattering equipment and sending Trill guards flying. Caleb dove aside as a flailing appendage pulverized the deck where he'd stood. Noah opened fire, his shots searing the behemoth's hide, but barely slowing its rampage. Zadok, seeing his chance, lunged for the conduit's activation panel. Caleb tackled him, sending them both crashing to the ground. They grappled, claws and fists and feet, as the behemoth raged above them. Noah leaped for the Nexus cipher, ripping at the cables that bound it to the conduit. The machine pulsed faster, power surging through its ancient circuits. A miniature black hole bloomed at its heart, sucking in light, matter, everything. Caleb and Zadok traded blows, rolling across the buckling deck as the singularity grew. Noah wrenched the cipher free with a shout of triumph that turned to a scream as a lashing tentacle caught him across the chest, sending him flying in a spray of blood. Caleb roared, smashing his forehead into Zadok's snout. The Trill reeled back, dazed. Caleb snatched up the Nexus cipher, staring into its pulsing depths. The singularity raged out of control, tearing the chamber apart. He looked to Noah, prone and bleeding, to Zadok, struggling to rise, to the cipher in his hand, thrumming with barely restrained power. The fate of the galaxy in this instant. Caleb hurled the Nexus cipher into the heart of the singularity. Zadok howled in rage and despair as the ancient device vanished into the black hole's maw. The singularity convulsed, twisted, and then collapsed in on itself with a blinding flash. Silence fell, broken only by the groan of twisted metal and the hiss of ruptured conduits. The behemoth was gone, sucked into the void. Zadok lay unmoving, his armor shattered and smoldering. Caleb staggered to Noah's side, dropping to his knees beside his fallen friend. Noah's eyes fluttered open, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Did we do it?" he wheezed. Caleb clasped Noah's hand, his voice rough with emotion. "Yeah, buddy, we did it. The cipher's gone. The galaxy's safe." Noah smiled, blood flecking his lips. Knew you'd make the right call. Knew you'd save us all." His eyes slid closed, his hand going limp in Caleb's grasp. Caleb bowed his head, grief and exhaustion washing over him. The crucible shuddered around him, the last of Zadok's abominations howling in the darkness. But the mission was complete. Against all odds they had succeeded. The galaxy would never know how close it had come to oblivion, would never know the price paid in blood and pain and sacrifice. That was the burden of being human, Caleb supposed, to do the impossible even if no one else ever knew. He gathered Noah into his arms and started the long walk back to the surface. The Retribution shuddered as Caleb sprinted through its corridors, Noah's blood slick on his hands. Alarms blared, the ship groaning under the strain of the Singularity's pull. He burst onto the bridge, laying Noah down as gently as he could manage. "Caleb," Liam called from the helm, hands flying over the controls. "That thing's going critical." On the view screen, the Singularity raged, a swirling vortex of darkness consuming everything in its path. The crucible crumbled, entire sections ripped away into the hungry maw. "We have to stop it," Caleb said, his voice raw. "Mason, can the Prometheus drive contain it?" The engineer nodded, already prying open access panels. "I can modulate the dark matter containment field, create a sort of bubble around the Singularity, but I need time." "You've got it," Liam said grimly, wrenching the ship around. "Ethan, divert everything we've got to the shields. We're going in." The Retribution plunged into the maelstrom, the ship shaking violently as it punctured the event horizon. Ethan's hands danced over the weapons console, rerouting power from the disruptors to the straining shield emitters. "Shields at 40% and falling," he called out over the roar of stressed bulkheads. Caleb braced himself against a bulkhead as the deck pitched beneath him. The Singularity filled the view screen, a seething mass of shattered space-time. They were close now, the Retribution's hull groaning under the immense tidal forces. "Almost there," Mason shouted from the engine room. "Just a few more seconds." Suddenly the bridge doors hissed open. Zadok stumbled through, his armor cracked and scorched, a mad light in his eyes. "You!" he snarled, leveling a disruptor at Caleb. "You've ruined everything." Caleb rushed forward, knocking the disruptor aside as it discharged. The two grappled, trading savage blows as the ship shuddered around them. "I was going to save the Trill," Zadok roared, spittle flying from his mandibles. "Make us strong." "By destroying everything else?" Caleb shot back, slamming his knee into the Trill's midsection. "That's not strength, that's fear." Zadok's claws raked across Caleb's face, drawing blood. The human staggered back, vision blurring. The Trill loomed over him, disruptor aimed at his head. A blur of motion, and suddenly Noah was there, throwing himself at Zadok with the last of his strength. The two tumbled back, through the shattered viewport, into the waiting embrace of the Singularity. "Noah!" Caleb screamed, lurching forward. But it was too late. In a blinding flash the Singularity collapsed, the Prometheus drive's containment field slamming into place with a concussive roar. The Retribution bucked, consoles exploding in showers of sparks as the energy release overloaded its systems. Liam fought with the controls, trying desperately to pull the ship away. Caleb could only watch numb as the crucible vanished in a blaze of light, taking Noah and Zadok with it. And then they were spinning away, trailing smoke and debris, the Retribution a crippled wreck drifting in the void. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the hiss of ruptured conduits and the distant wail of alarms. They had won, but the cost of the cost had been too high. Drill ships appeared on the shattered viewscreen hailing them. Caleb barely heard their words. Rescue, the Council, commendations. None of it mattered. Not now. Not with Noah gone. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.